Good morning or good afternoon, as whatever may be in your location. Today, I would like to dedicate our Day of Zen to the Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh in gratitude for the gifts that he has given to the world and to us. As everyone knows by now, he passed away just last week, January 22nd, 2022, at the ripe old age of 95. And this was after 7 or 8 years of being in his sick bed, where after he had a stroke around 2014, he asked to be returned to his home temple in Vietnam. So they granted his wish. So they brought him there, and that is where he spent his last years until his passing away last week. And from certain testimonies, it is said that those who attended to him during those times of his illness realized that he was embodying all that he taught and all that he talked about in his whole life, even in those times when he was just sick in bed and just needing everyone's help and not being able to do anything for himself. But in that state, he continued to be fully himself in the concrete body condition that he was in. And so he was a source of inspiration to the very end. And so with that, what I would like to offer today is not so much a glorification of an individual named Thich Nhat Hanh, whom we have already talked about and who we may have known from writings or from some of his talks on the internet, but as the person who embodies all that each and every one of us is also called to be. And what are those key themes that Thich Nhat Hanh, Thai, as he was familiarly called by those who received his guidance, Thai meaning teacher, what are those traits that he embodied in his life that are also aspects of what we ourselves in our Zen practice are seeking to realize in our own lives? Just to cut to the chase, I will name 3 points that I would like to highlight and invite everyone to reflect in your own life, on your own life, looking at Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese monk, who was a model of all of these for all of us, and see where it may resonate and where each one of us may more fully embody that particular theme. And the 3 themes are, right from the start, mindfulness, articulated very well with concrete instructions in his very well-read book, The Miracle of Mindfulness. The second theme is interbeing. He is attributed with having coined that term, interbeing, inter-are, to interbe. And that is precisely what the Buddha also realized as the way things are. And I'll talk more about that. And the third aspect that we are also invited to look at is his way of being socially and ecologically engaged in the pains of the world. He can even be called Mr. Socially Engaged Buddhism. All of these 3 terms can be attributed to him. Well, it was not that he was the first to teach it, but that these 3 are somehow the key points that summed up his life of Buddhist practice, his life as a human being. Mindfulness, interbeing, socio-ecological engagement. Mindfulness. his teaching, which was conveyed to many people around the world through his well-attended retreats here in the United States, in his home, the place that he began to call home after he was exiled from his own home country, Plum Village in France, or as a guest teacher in so many different places throughout the world. It is the cultivation of mindfulness that was a key theme that he invited people to taste. And I do not need to go on to the details of this. You can find it in his simple but very winning book and very attractive book called The Miracle of Mindfulness. And I'd like to summarize that with a response he gave to Oprah Winfrey when Oprah Winfrey interviewed him. And if you have not seen that, I recommend that you go online and look at Thich Nhat Hanh interview with Oprah Winfrey, and you will find it in many different websites. There, Oprah Winfrey, after asking him about his life and about what he stood for, asked him a personal question. Do you meditate every day? And as a listener, you would be tempted. I was tempted to say, duh. That was what he embodied. And so to ask him, do you meditate every day is just like asking a normal human being, do you eat every day? Or do you wash your face every day? And so on. But his response was most notable for me. His response was in a very simple and humble way without bragging or anything. He just said, oh, I meditate every moment. And so then that took Oprah by surprise and then asked him about that. Now, to meditate every moment, you might imagine is, oh, he was always trying to be there and so on and trying to get his mind together. That may have been so in the early stages of his monastic career or monastic life. But after a habitual way of coming to a point of stillness, breathing with awareness, and allowing the mind to settle in the here and now, it becomes second nature. So to meditate every moment is not so much to take efforts to try to meditate, as many of us still have to do, and that's important. But after a while, it becomes such a natural flow that it's simply a matter of just being there. So that meditation is no longer a doing for him, but it is a mode of being. And what is that? It is simply being mindful or being present, being there with whatever is happening. So that's the invitation for each of us also in our own lives, to be there where we are. And that is simply right here, right now. When we are taking a meal, to be present and really be grateful for all the things that we're receiving with the meal, and also to be present with those who are around us as we take the meal and to really enjoy that feast. It is simple as that. It is not to take any special effort of trying to concentrate and trying to get my mind to focus and get away with and do away with all of these distractions. At some stage, we may have to do that, and you have experienced that as you try to still sit in stillness. But again, a habitual repetition of this gift that we can give to ourselves of just being still, breathing in the present moment, and allowing the mind to be here and now, right now, opens to us the miracle of each present moment. This is given very clearly in an example that you may read about if you look at some anecdotes about Thich Nhat Hanh and how he helped people, realize the gift that they are given and the gift that we are all given, namely this gift of realizing the miracle of every moment. There was a young man who had been diagnosed with a terminal illness, whom the doctors said, you have 3 months to live. And so this young man, who still saw so many years ahead of him, was distraught. And so he happened to have this fortune of having a conversation with Thai, the teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh. And then, so he told him his situation. And in response, Thich Nhat Hanh said, "Oh, how fortunate you are. You have still 3 months. All you need really is a day to really relish the feast of life. All you need really is, for example, to really celebrate your life. If you have a half day, go on a picnic with friends and you will realize how good it is, how joyful it is, what a glorious thing it is to just be able to go on a picnic. So now you have 3 whole months in which you can picnic all you want, namely to live each moment in a way that you can celebrate that moment and be at ease and be grateful and enjoy the gifts of the air, of nature, of the trees, of the sky, and enjoy the company of friends." And so a continuation of that story that I read online noted that that young man was so moved by that, and he changed his attitude toward death. And so with that change of attitude, he was able to live another 15 years. Imagine what a great gift. But then, you know, you don't count the chronological length anymore, but you simply are invited to take each full day for the fullness that it is. So who knows? One of us may, any one of us could die tomorrow, or in a few days, or a few months, or maybe even a few years. But we don't need to measure the length of time. As they say, it's not how long you live, it's not how long you live, but what you put into every day of your life, that your life can really be totally meaningful and significant. So let us take this invitation. So the word mindfulness has become a buzzword nowadays. So it has become taken in so many different ways. I rather prefer the word heartfulness, to put our heart into the moment wherever we are. I must confess, I'm not always able to be faithful to that. I get distracted, I get distraught, and sometimes I have to plan something ahead that I miss what's going on. And so I have to keep recognizing that and just say, I bungled it again. And so I begin again and continue and allow my heart to come back to the present moment. No blame, no way of reproach, but simply acknowledging, I failed again, and now we begin with a new opportunity. And that is the invitation for each and every one of us to take this moment as a new beginning and let this moment open up the infinite treasures that we are given if we only open our eyes to look. The miracle of mindfulness. And that mindfulness really allows us to enter into that second theme that Thich Nhat Hanh was also very often heard describing, namely that no one of us lives only for oneself alone. There is no single entity in this universe that stands out independently of others, but we are all inter-are. We are contained in one another. And he gives the famous example of a rose. You may see a rose in full bloom and take it and smell it and be grateful for the gift of that rose in its beauty and aroma and the way it enhances your life. But wait a few days and that rose will wilt and it'll be thrown into a garbage pit, or it will be thrown back to the earth. And so what Thich Nhat Hanh suggests to us is, if you look at that rose, and if your eyes are open, you will also see the garbage, and you will also see the earth, and you will also see the air, and you will also see the rain that nourished the rose bush that gave rise to this flower, and you will see everything else in the universe. If you look at that rose. Or if you look at any one single thing with clear eyes, you will see that whatever you are looking at, whether it be a book or your own finger or your own self, contains the whole universe. This is not an exaggeration. And this is what can come to us in a clear way as we sit in stillness, as we allow our mind just to be at rest in the here and now, and our hearts are open and we realize we are all enmeshed and entwined and intimately connected with one another, so that I cannot say I am independently of anything else that is. In short, each and everything in the universe is an I am, and my individual I am is intimately connected with all the I ams of the entire universe. And that is indeed a cause of celebration. Let me read to you a short excerpt that you may also have read somewhere in reading Thich Nhat Hanh's works about the flower. The flower is made of non-flower elements. We can describe the flower as full of everything. There is nothing that is not present in the flower. We see sunshine, we see the rain, we see clouds, we see the earth, and we also see time and space in a flower. A flower, like everything else, is made entirely of non-flower elements. Listen to that. You, me, everyone else are made up of non-you elements. In short, you are not you. That's the famous paradox of Buddhism. But don't take that in a very, very linear way. Take that as an invitation to see the trees, the ground, the sky, other people, animals, the whole shebang as what constitutes who you are. The flower is full of everything except one thing, a separate self, a separate identity. A flower cannot be by herself alone. The flower has to interbe with the sunshine, the cloud, and everything in the cosmos. If we understand being in terms of interbeing, then we are much closer to the truth. Interbeing is not being, and it is not non-being. Here he goes philosophical. Interbeing means empty of a separate identity, empty of a separate self. And those are the kinds of words that maybe get to the imagination or strike the fancy of the philosophically minded ones. And they harp about Buddhism in these contradictory terms and so on, empty and yet full and so on. But if we simply look at it as a very direct and very plain matter that I am not who I think I am, but I am contained in everything, and everything is contained in me. Then if we really get that, our hearts cannot but be filled with joy and gratitude to and for each and everything and each and everyone, because you are who I am, and I am who you are. So let's celebrate. And in our own Zen language, this is what we call Kensho, seeing our true nature, or Satori in Japanese. In Zen, people make a big hype of this, and people make records of the moment when they experience this and so on. But it is not necessarily something that is that special. It is simply opening our hearts to that fact of what we really are right from the start. And so there are some who get a big emotional jolt out of it, and it can take days for it to subside, and that's good. There are some who just are able to make a shift in perception of who they are and realize, that's it, and then find a deep, deep peace that they don't have to open a bottle of champagne for or jump around for, but simply acknowledge that I am everyone else, and everyone else is me. And so therefore, I feel a deep, deep kinship with each and everyone. If we look at what we have been describing so far, mindfulness or heartfulness, as I would prefer to say it, is really what we can understand by the first fruit of Zen. You have heard me talk about the fruits of Zen, and the first fruit is that of concentration, con with a hyphen, centration, that our life begins to be more and more focused and begins to be more and more at home in the here and now. And we live out of the core, the innermost center of our being. And from there, we see, hear, touch, taste, and see, and we realize that we are connected. And so that assures us that we belong. That sense of being present, that sense of being centered, that sense of really being there and being oneself is the first fruit of Zen. And that itself opens up to that second fruit, that moment when we realize, aha, I am not separate from anything at all. Each and everything in this world that I see, hear, taste, touch, and feel is my kin. And so with that sense of deep kinship, rejoicing and gratitude comes. And out of that comes a deep, deep concern for the pain and suffering of all that I am, which what the world is right now. And so that with that flows the third theme in Thich Nhat Hanh's whole life, the total engagement with what the world needs, crying out in pain, crying out in injustice, crying out in suffering, so that one becomes an agent of peace. There's another famous work of Thich Nhat Hanh called Being Peace. He is often described as a peace activist. And yes, he was active in for the cause of peace. But rather than an activist, his whole life simply exuded what peace meant. Not just peace in terms of absence of conflict, but peace in terms of embracing all opposites in one's heart and being right there in the middle and mediating and trying to bring different or opposing sides to be able to sit at table and negotiate. And that was what happened. That's why he was thrown out of Vietnam. The North side and the South side, he felt needed to talk to one another, and they would have none of that. Oh, if you say talk with the other side, they say, oh, you're with them and not with us, so we don't want you. And the other side would, of course, say the same. So he was considered a persona non grata by the warring sides in his own country, and so he was sent out and exiled. But that is what a peacemaker is called to be right in the middle of conflict and to offer oneself to see whether there can be some way of connecting so that we can all live in justice and equity. And as a Christian, what that reminds me of is Jesus on the cross, offering his whole life so that the world may live, showing that we can live in peace and being right there in the middle of the conflict, but not as a participant trying to aggravate it, but as one who then puts oneself and embodies in oneself that mode of bringing things together, which can only come through pain and suffering for oneself. So what this entails is that we, as we are earnest in our practice, need to also be prepared to undergo similar pains and sufferings as our fellow sentient beings are undergoing, so that we can be right there in the midst of their struggles and become an instrument of peace, and become an instrument of healing, and become an instrument of reconciliation. This country, the USA, is marked by such polar opposites that some people are saying that there could be a civil war sooner or later because of the very blatant oppositions between the sides. And now it is precisely at this time that we need to have that kind of way of bridging that opposition in acceptance of one another as parts of one another. And so, and that is only to speak of this country, the whole world is in a sense, in a fragmented situation. So those of us who are able to practice like this cannot keep this practice within our own little individual lives. We are called to give this life of ours so that the peace that we experience in and through our sitting still, breathing with awareness, living in the here and now, may be able to be offered as a gift for the peace of the whole world, for the healing of the wounds of earth. So with that then, Thich Nhat Hanh, the human being, has passed on from our midst. And so what I would like to conclude this talk with is a short poem, not by himself, but by a poet named Mary Elizabeth Fry. But I'm from the contents of the poem, Thich Nhat Hanh himself would have been able to identify with what Mary Elizabeth Fry is proclaiming, especially as he consoles the persons who are mourning his death. This is what this poem says, and which I believe Thich Nhat Hanh would also convey to us at this point. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am in 1,000 winds that blow. I am the softly falling snow. I am the gentle showers of rain. I am the fields of ripening grain. I am in the morning hush of beautiful birds in circling flight. I am the starshine of the night. I am in the flowers that bloom. I am in a quiet room. I am in the birds that sing. I am in each and every lovely thing. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I do not die. And if we can make that poem our very own, then our fears and anxieties about our own death will simply vanish away. There is no death. There is no passing, or, well, you can say passing from one form to another. But all in all, at the ultimate place of it, it is simply to say, I am everything we celebrate together. So let us continue in that mode and deepen our practice and enhance and embody mindfulness, interbeing, and our engagement with the pains of the world, knowing that there is no longer any little self that needs to be concerned with its own little ambitions and benefits, but that we have now died to the little self and have enabled this little gift of mine to become consumed by the world that we all are together as a global family.
Boundless compassion, absorbing your sounds awakens the Buddha right here. This Buddha, the source of compassion. This Buddha receives only compassion. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, just compassion. Thus the pure heart always rejoices. In the light recall this, in the dark recall this. Moment after moment, the true heart arises. Time after time, there is nothing but this. Absorbing your sounds awakens a Buddha right here. This Buddha, the source of compassion. This Buddha receives only compassion. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, just compassion. Thus the pure heart always rejoices. In the light recalls it, in the dark recalls it. Moment after moment, the true heart arises. Time after time, there is nothing but this absorbing world sounds awakens the Buddha right here. This Buddha, the source of compassion. This Buddha receives only compassion. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, just compassion. Thus the pure heart always rejoices. In the light recalls it, in the dark recalls it. Moment after moment, the true heart arises. Time after time, there is nothing but this.